In this lesson, you'll learn several tasks from how to set up the blade tool to adjusting the cut settings to match the material you plan to cut. First, let's adjust the blade length on the blade tool. You'll notice that there are numbers around the blade tool from 1 to 10. These numbers at the red mark indicate how far the blade is extended beyond the tip. In other words, the higher the number, the farther the blade is extended. The goal to extending the blade is to extend it so that it will cut through the thickness of the material and not beyond. Otherwise, you could end up with torn corners. In this case, we will be cutting heat transfer material, so we can start by setting the blade number to 2. If you pass your finger over the tip, you should feel a light scratch. If not, set it to a higher value. If you are cutting really thick materials, you may be using this blade, the PMBS 002. This blade tool has 2 rows of numbers in order to extend the blade further. The way this particular blade tool works is that as you are turning the knob, once you reach 10, you can then continue with 11 and count up from there. Next, to verify that the blade is extended far enough to cut through your material, place the blade tool in your hand and then draw a circle, making sure the blade tool is in an upright position. It should pull up relatively easily. Once the blade is set, mount it onto the tool holder by pulling out the locking lever. You'll know that the lever is out when the dot on the top changes to black, indicating that the blade tool can be mounted. Next, slip the blade tool into the tool holder. Then to secure it, push the locking lever in. The dot now switches to white, indicating that the blade tool is locked in. Next, we need to set the cutting condition. When looking at the main screen, you'll notice at the top it shows the current cutting condition and its settings. Right now, this condition shows that the tool is set to the standard BS001 blade. The speed is set to 30. The force is set to 14. And the acceleration is set at 2. The button below, the Condition Setting button, when pressed, will allow us to adjust these settings. And after the settings are adjusted, we can then test them by pressing this button, which will have the CE Lite cut a test pattern. Let's first adjust the settings for our particular material by pressing the Condition Setting button. In this menu, we can adjust each setting. While these settings are pretty close to what we want, let's go over the different adjustments briefly. The first setting is the tool type. When pressed, it displays a list of tool types that Graphtec offers for this device. The top 2 are blade types, whereas the third one is a pen tool. Other is if we want to add our own blade type. Generally, it is the top 3 you will be using, but in this case, the top tool is the one we have mounted. So we can just press the check mark to accept this, and then press X to exit the menu. The next setting is the speed at which the cutting tool will travel at. Currently, it is set to 30, which is a good speed. So once again, we can press the check mark to accept that value. The next setting is force, which is how much pressure will be applied when the CE Lite is cutting. In this case, the force is where we want it to be, but notice it can be adjusted by pressing the up or down arrow keys on the side. Once again, press the check mark to accept this value. Acceleration is a value that you rarely have to change, but it works in the same manner to adjust. In this case, once again, we can just leave it as is. If we press the Next Page button, we can see the other settings that can be adjusted for this condition. We won't be going into detail on them right now. Let's press X to exit this menu. Now that our settings are adjusted, the next step is to perform a test cut to see if our settings will cut our material correctly. To do this, press the Cut Test button. In this menu, there are 2 options, 1 piece and 3 pieces. In this case, we just need the 1 piece or pattern. The 3-piece pattern will cut 3 patterns with different levels of force. In the middle of the menu are the arrow keys, which, if need be, will allow us to position the tool head to where we want to place the test cut. This is helpful in cases where you want to avoid marring a section of the material. To cut the test pattern, press the OK button in the middle of the arrow keys. Once it cuts the pattern, it will automatically advance the material to the back where the pattern can be removed. What you want to see is where the rectangle removes relatively easily without removing the triangle, as you see here. Once you obtain this, you are ready to cut your design.